And hey, look at that. I think we're live.
We're doing it.
Welcome to Cult EXE. We're a channel here at Plus One EXP. I'm Keegan EXE, the content necromancer and a cult leader here at Plus One.
And I'm Sarah, your stepdad and the other cult leader here at Plus One. Plus One is a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard and skincare alchemy, and the Bardic College of Content Creation. The dream and hope here at Plus One is to help amazing designers find great players who love their games and help amazing players find great designers whose games they can love.
Oh, this is me.
It's you again.
Today you're joining us for Character Study, a cult classic where we sit down with folks across the TTRPG space to learn more about their character in the systems they love and who they are outside of gaming. We're taking audience questions, so feel free to chime in with questions as we move along. Our guest today is Kali, half the award-winning Gym Room Games. They are responsible for titles such as Nine Lives of Valhalla, High Magic Low Lives, and The Weaver's Observatory. And right now they are funding Duckborg over on Kickstarter. Duckburg. I know how to say it. I've seen the TikTok.
Nobody does. It's a big debate.
Hi, this is Kali though.
Yeah, hi, welcome.
Hi. Nice to be here.
We're very excited to have you. We are also really excited to jump into the system that we're going to be building a character in. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So we're going to be building a character in Nine Lives of Valhalla, which has had a couple different iterations. It was actually the first game that Dan and I worked on together years and years ago as a teeny tiny little print at home zine with half the layout done in like Google Docs and half of it just us like copy pasting and taping stuff down. And then it was like a year and a half ago that we dusted it off and turned it into an actual thing that people can buy in their friendly local game stores even. And the gist of it is sort of death metal Viking cats seeking to earn their way into Valhalla by dying gloriously enough 9 times. And the tricky thing about that is that every time that you die gloriously, the gods that you worship up in Kitty Valhalla want to celebrate that and reward you, so they give you a blessing that makes you stronger and harder to kill, making it that much harder to actually continue to die gloriously enough to earn your way all the way in to stay.
I love it. We don't normally dress up for these streams, but I couldn't resist. I had to wear my spooky kitty dismembered hand sweater because it felt right. It was the right choice for this.
I wear this hat with cat ears on it constantly.
You're always ready for this.
For streams. Yeah, this was nothing new for me.
It's a banger. It's a classic. Awesome. Well, I'm very excited. Before we kind of jump into the actual like character creation, I would love to talk a little bit about your background in TTRPGs. Like, what drew you to game design, and how do you find yourselves where you are now with these games?
So I actually got into TTRPGs specifically through Dan, my Gem Room Games partner. He was somebody that I met in library school. We were both going to library school together and started playing board games and going to, like, every week we went to this game store to their board game night. And it was mostly fun and cool, except for the number of dudes who really wanted to slow down to really explain the rules to me very gently. And one night it got so bad that Dan was like, hey, I run a game thing. Do you want to just come to my game thing instead? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll go like play board games or whatever with some people. And I get there and he's like, so this is a little bit different. And that was the first time that I played a tabletop RPG and actually was playtesting something that he was working on. So I never like got into playing before I was immediately playtesting and giving feedback on that. And because of that, I came into it with a real strong, like, okay, let's always make sure that people can approach this and understand this, and that you're being Dan at that point, not using a ton of like lingo that only somebody who's been playing TTRPGs for the last decade would know, but that anybody can pick it up and have this be their first game. And then so I was giving him a lot of feedback on that, and then that turned into sort of developmental editing, and then other editing, and then the next thing I knew, I was kind of just making games with him. And we at some point were like, so we should do this, like come up with a name or something and start putting my name on stuff too, since I'm doing stuff on our games that are our games, instead of it being games by Dan Phipps, who happens to have somebody in the background also doing stuff. And now we're here, and I do Gem Room games as full-time as I can, which is not something I saw myself getting to like a decade ago, but here I am.
There is a comment in the chat real fast from Aaron King. Collie sounds familiar, like a radio DJ. What's that?
No idea. No. Oh, I mean, quick boost for Ken Laurie Bannerless Games is Void 1680 AM, because as Keegan mentioned, we're funding Duck.org right now, and Dan and I got to collaboratively play Void to make an AM radio DJ broadcasting live from the heart of Duck.org, and that played last week and was super fun. Also, for a lot of reasons, but specifically for me, because it's the first time in so many years that I've been able to sit down and actually just listen to music and listen to the ways that like one song ends and goes into another. Like I used to do that to make like mix CDs and mixtapes, and just haven't done that in forever. And so it was like the middle of a day, and I'm sitting there being like, wait, let me go back and let me try switching these two songs. And it was so like, oh my God, I haven't done this in so long. It's so fun.
The like touch point of like the art of the mixtape, of like making sure you caught things and you like ended it at the right time and all of that stuff. It really is a skill that like was honed. Like I remember me and my siblings like listening to the radio and being like, the song's coming on, quick, go, you gotta catch it.
Special requesting it over and over to try to get that perfect recording.
Yes. One other quick question is, Gem Room Games, where did the name come from?
So the name is inspired by Dan and my joint favorite room at the Los Angeles Natural History Museum, where we used to go pretty often. I forget the like real name. It's named after somebody with a lot of money, I'm sure, but it's the Gem and Mineral rooms. And I forget. I know I've got a notebook somewhere that is all of our notes on like possible names that we were considering, but then we hit on that one and it was like, yes, this is good. We'll do that. Everything we make will be a gem. It'll be great.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that a lot. I didn't even put that two and two together, but now my heart is melted. That's so cute. Oh, I love it very much. But let's talk about a gem. Let's build a character in Nine Lives to Valhalla. I'm really excited.
I got a little character sheet. I'm ready.
I have one on stream. Look at me go.
Perfect. All right.
I'm so worried. I've seen, just related to gym rooms, I saw a stream where Dan tried to fill in a character sheet and it went wrong so many ways, and I'm so nervous this time.
Oh no.
I don't think it's gonna happen to me, but if it happens, if it gets fucked up, we can blame Dan, I think
It's somehow fair. Dan's fault. Thanks, Dan. Awesome. So where do we start? Where are the first places in defining a character?
So, I'm actually flipping open a copy of Nine Lives to Valhalla now because my brain has been real deep in ducks for a
Yeah,
while instead of
it's
cats.
this is a big old switch for sure.
Totally, the number of legs has changed, fur to feathers. Although we do keep getting into conversations recently about the definition of furries and whether or not, we've made one game about definitely furry animals, and do ducks count because it's feathers, which is not fur, but they are animals. And on 3 different platforms now, I've had people questioning the number of
right
games we've made.
I would love to hear someone from that community kind of opine on that, because I don't really know what the answer is. I just kind of assumed if it was a critter
from the outside for me,
right, or if are all critters, is it just, I don't even know.
What are the boundaries?
Tegan looks like they have a comment, and I'm dying to hear what it is.
I was just saying, I know people we could get on stream to answer this question, but not right now.
Okay, we'll
put a pin in that.
We'll go out to the people and we'll gather that intel and bring it back to you, Collie. We are on it.
Cool. Need a real, new stretch goal. We will assemble a panel and
we'll hire a furry consultant.
Yes.
So I feel like the first thing that we do is name, fur color, and description. Which I wanna go with Astrid, because that feels like a good Viking kitty name.
100% it does.
Let's go Astrid. Astrid Stormtooth, Stormclaw, Stormfang, Stormfang.
Ooh, I like that.
Astrid Stormfang.
That's more metal for sure.
So Astrid Stormfang, who will be gray because that's stormy, but with white socks, because that it's like clouds. It's totally not just about it being cute. And golden eyes, because that's lightning-y.
Yes, I love it. These ads are very good. I am also learning in this moment, it would be impossible for me to not just build Pascal every time I played this game. It would just constantly be my own cat. I'm like, sorry guys.
Every time I've seen people play, it's either deep, hard metal, dark cats, or this is fluffy. No in between, just all hard or cuddly.
This is very good.
Ken in the chat says it's only now occurring to me what incredible crossover this has with the YA warrior cat stuff, and yeah,
hell yeah.
So,
very true.
As soon as I heard Stormfang, I was like, okay, yeah, no, I got the vibe now.
We're doing it. We're into it. I will ask, it's such a unique idea, and so wonderful to mesh cats and the 9 lives concept with Norse mythology. So I guess I want to ask first, did the idea of a game about cats come first, or was it a game about Norse mythology, or did the two ideas just naturally occur together? You know what I mean?
Both. It started a little bit because I was pressuring Dan in that he was feeling like he wasn't getting things to a finishing point, and so I had challenged him to try to do a zine game a month for a whole year and just push those out. And with him trying to do that, he needed to be able to come up with some ideas real quick. So he was using a method that I think he learned in if he's in chat, totally correct me, but it was an improv class maybe, of listing one set of things and then in a second column a whole other set of things, and just start drawing lines between them and see what comes up. And Vikings and cats showed up on this list, and it was all right, Viking cats, let's go. And that's how that came out. They came out together, I suppose.
That's crazy. Like when the first time I heard the concept of the game, I was like, this is brilliant. Like this is very good, right? The concept of Valhalla, dying with honor, and then like dying multiple times because you're like a little warrior kitty. Like, get out.
Well, and like how could we make a game about cat warriors and not lean into the concept of 9 lives?
100%.
Like
100%.
With full admission, now that it's been played a number of times, that it does a little bit sabotage the game, because if you're actually doing a good job making it through a full 9 lives, is that takes a lot longer than we might have originally intended. Maybe we should have like encouraged making all of your enemies way stronger or something. But so we encourage people to go ahead and like roll to find out, say, how many times you've already died, because that can kind of boost you forward, because it's a very high energy game to run. And trying to, like, if you are death keeping it up for the full length of the game, that's a really tiring game. This is not one of your like sit down and play for 8 hours, because we intentionally did not build in any breathing room. And that's not necessarily the kindest thing to do to your GM. So yeah, we I don't remember if it even actually made it into the book. I think we had to tuck it into the adventure that we put out with it, that like it's okay to maybe start on your like 4th or 5th death, just to scoot things along a little,
get things going.
Yeah.
That's delightful. I love it. So we've got our Astrid, we've got the description. Was there anything else in this first section?
In the first section, name, fur, and description. So we've got her down.
Will ask, this is a very specific cat person question. Is she a ground cat, or is she like a tree cat? Egan's laughing, but they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, no, my cat's a ground cat.
My cat's a ground cat.
I think I'm gonna say tree cat. Because that way she can leap down more effectively.
I like that. This is very good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now we can continue.
So next is favorite god. And we've got 5 gods to choose from, and each one comes with their own little dice group that you can assign. And we've got Pardus, Anka, Tigris, Leo, and Uncia. These are, I think, the Latin names of the Panthera. And I like Uncia because we gave Uncia all the witches as her supporters. So that's who Astrid is going to particularly worship, is Uncia, who has all the witches around.
This is very. Would you consider yourself more on like the witch side of things versus, like, I feel like there's like witches, vampires, or werewolves, like, and witches is kind of like the opting out of the conversation. We're like, no, I'm good. I'm gonna go over here and like be in my like little hag pit and do my thing.
I kind of like witches because you can have hag witch, you can have like hearth witch. There's so many. You can be like the witch from the Vitch, like smashing up babies, or you can be like just a total cutie with some books and a cute little cauldron. Like there's a whole variety.
It has a better range, I feel like, than other
diversity in witches.
Yep. I like that.
Sarah, that was such a specific question.
It really was, and I have zero regrets because I get it. Because I feel like it's like, I don't know. I feel like more femme-coded like critters, like mermaids or witches or whatever. I feel like it's so interesting to watch where people go with those, depending, like there's the main conversation, which vampires and werewolves, like we kind of live in that place. But when one of the other ones comes out of left field, I'm like, hold on, I want to talk about that. Did you just say banshee? Can we talk about that? Like, that's crazy. That's not one of the ones people go for. That's not the first
that's
card in the deck.
One.
Right.
The spooky binary.
Yes, 100%.
Ooh.
So we've got Astrid. She's a witchy kitty cat, which I'm already a massive fan. When you were developing the different gods and stuff, were you pulling from like Viking mythology, or was it kind of like a let's just do?
I think we were more trying to like pulling from the inspiration of the main types of cat themselves.
Gotcha.
And kind of pulling like Anka is and watch somebody who actually knows their Latin and their like cat hierarchy is gonna be like, oh well, that's not whatever. In our game, Anka is leopard and Uncia is snow leopard, and that actually is like how those cat families work out. And then sort of pulling from like, okay, so what would be the characteristics of snow leopard versus tiger versus panther, and just teasing out what that what characteristics that type of cat might embody, and and keep on pulling it until we had a god.
Right. I think and so it all started from like the big cats and kind of narrowing down from there. Love it. This is very good. After we pick our god that we're going to worship and die for, where do we go from here?
So picking the god is an important part because that helps to determine the attributes. Every god has their own assigned dice pool, and like Uncia has 2 d4s, a d8, and a d12 to assign to either brutality, viciousness, cunning, or ferocity. So I'm gonna give, I feel like I want Astrid to be the most vicious of
Hell yeah.
all the things. So I'm going to give viciousness the D12. And we've got a nice little breakdown. Like viciousness is about precision, finesse, balance, and spite.
Very good.
And I'm going to build up some spite. And brutality has force, vigor, hardiness, and obstinance, which is another good point. Cunning is anticipation, maneuvering, machinations, and treachery. And ferocity is instinct, reaction, awareness, and fury. And I like treachery. So I'm going to give the D8 to cunning so that she can be spiteful and treacherous.
This is very good.
That leaves me with 2 d4s for brutality and ferocity. So that gives her a name, a physical description, a favored god, and her attributes.
This is very good. I love the inclusion of like obstinate is not something that you encounter a whole lot ever at all.
Definitely in cats.
Oh, for sure in cats. Like absolutely. And like frankly in people it's just not like a readily available like trait that like I don't think people like, oh, they're being so obstinate. But like that's such a wonderful like I love seeing how people use language or in their games, right, to convey different things, because it could be very easy to say something like stubborn or willful, right? But like, it just doesn't have the same connotation as like obstinate.
One of my favorite parts of writing is always going and spending way too much time on word hippo, and just kind of gleaning like, okay, well this word is like almost the right vibe but not quite, so if I go like 5 screens deep on different words, how can I find the one that is exactly the right tone?
Right.
Honestly, the
Right.
two bits of game design are going on word hippo to find the right words, and the other, oh fuck, you already said it, I lost it. I'll come back to this thought when I remember things again. ADHD's hard, y'all.
Excellent. Well, I'll make a note. I've got it right here.
Oh,
It's
the other one
perfect.
is using words you're not sure how to pronounce. That's what I was gonna say.
Okay, so I was like, this god, like Unsia, and I looked it up, and Google's like, well, there are 3 equally valid ways to pronounce it, and it's like, God damn it, Google. Like, that is helpful and also not.
You gotta get
helpful
your
at
shit
all.
together, Google. I don't need this.
I need answers.
Yeah, that's
I'm
my
not
favorite.
a Latin scholar here. Like, I don't know.
Like every time an extremist gets played, someone's like, "Hey, how do you pronounce this?" I'm like, "Please don't ask me." I wrote it down because it looked cool. I don't know how to say it.
But it's like I've always been one of those readers who I know how a word looks, and there's a solid chance that I have at least a good idea of how it is spelled, but how it actually happens out loud, that's a whole other issue.
Oh, yeah. That word for me was subtle. Like I read the the Golden Compass, the subtle knife, all that stuff, and I knew like I'd never in my life heard a word called subtle. Like that's not. I'd never heard that, so I knew that was wrong. But
But what is it actually?
But what is it actually? And when someone finally said subtle, and like I could see it in the context where I heard and read at the same time, I was like, oh my gosh. This person's a saint. Like, they don't even know it.
But if you just hear that word out of context, also, it's like, well, why would I? There's no B in that. But why would you connect those?
You never would. And like, it's that.
Thanks, English.
Thank you for this gift. But at the same time, like, it is kind of, I don't know. I think it's kind of fun. Like, you just kind of stumble along, and it's like, that's how you said that word. That's amazing. Because that's not how I would have said it at all. And it creates like the kinship of everybody reading a book and then coming together and being like, no one's actually going to say the character's name because they don't want to be the one that says it wrong. But we can all acknowledge that it's a crazy ass name. So we're just like,
Dan's been keeping me up because he is on TikTok. I am not. And
honestly, good choice on your part.
I try to like have my lines. But people have been, I guess, coming at him to inform him that we mispronounced Duckborg. And it's sort of like, okay, so how can we convey that we made up a word based on a pun of an American fictional city, and otherwise it's like, well, we know there's an umlaut somewhere. I'm so sorry. We're Americans making a cartoon joke. We're not trying to. And the thing that I love is nobody has a problem with us spelling duck UKK. It's all the Borg. Everybody's got problems with Borg, and nobody has a problem with duck.
Guys, listen. I'll take. It's a goof 'em up. Like, why are you trying to come at him for a goof 'em up?
It's a joke. It's
a
fun.
very innocent, silly goof 'em up. It's okay. It doesn't have to be like grammatically correct.
One of them that I heard is that it's supposed to be like duck boy.
Oh,
and I'm like, I'm supposed to pronounce what now? Like, there's a G.
That's amazing.
Well, the G is pronounced J, and the O is pronounced ooh.
I am not usually one to be like, I'm sorry, I'm American. But in this particular case, like, no, this is a joke about DuckTales. Like,
yeah, this is a DuckTale bit. Like, here in Duckburg, come on.
Right? You just said it. Berg, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
And then I get in my head about it, and I'm like, Duckburg, Duckborg, Duckburg.
Words, once the words stop, like, when they just become sounds and they no longer have meaning, that's when you know, like, it's time to take a nap, it's time to go outside, like, you're good.
Go do something else.
Yep.
I can't think of how many times I've said Morkborg on stream, and then only to find out years later, oh, it's Merkberg? Okay.
Well, because it's like...
You mean that O's pronounced E?
Well, but also, I guess it's Merc because it's murky, it's dark, but also it's a translation of a concept. So, like, I don't know, but by the time you're punning off of translations of concepts, I feel like you gotta allow for some wiggle room there.
Come on,
Yeah.
TikTok, behave.
I fully
Your
expect
opinions.
everyone on TikTok to shape up and
Yeah,
have a reasonable
because of
sense
that.
of humor now.
No worries.
We did it. We fixed TikTok. We've done it. Awesome. So we've got our god picked out. We've assigned our dice. We're feeling very vicious, I believe was the top stat.
Yep, vicious
we're-
followed by cunning.
We're very spiteful. I love
Mhm.
it. This is the person after my own heart. What's next?
So we can go a couple different directions. We can keep going to find out about her mastered weapon, which is her specialty, or we can dive a little more narrative into her hated nemesis.
Ooh.
Oh, you know what? I have an idea and I just opened it up like that was an option and now I want to do weapons actually. So
Perfect. I love the idea of saving the nemesis for last. Like, I want a good idea of who Astrid Stormfang is before we figure out who her enemy
Who
is.
she hates.
So I'm gonna pick, she's Astrid Stormfang, so I'm gonna pick Fang and Claw. The options for mastered weapon, which you can use any weapon, and we've had people even like steal weapons off of raccoons and actually I think there was an actual play where somebody used a raccoon as a weapon, which is not in the book, but like
no.
Godspeed, have fun with your imagination.
They're playing the game right, I'm telling you.
Very much so.
Raccoon is superior weapon.
you got to swing it. But officially, the mastered weapon types are dual weapons, like, you're one in each hand, single weapon, great weapon, like you're real big guy, bow, fang and claw, or dark magics. And that is magics with a CK because that's the right vibe. Right. But she's Astrid Stormfang, so I'm embracing the obvious there and going with Fang and Claw, which also works well because I made viciousness her top skill, and Fang and Claw works with viciousness and ferocity. So that should provide for some good that and I can name the mastered weapons in the book. We do encourage you to name your weapon because it is a part of you. I suppose for Astrid, quite literally a part of her. But I want to name Astrid's tooth Nif the Enduring.
This is very good.
Thank you.
This is very good. I love it. I love the image of like the big guys at a bar fight and they've got like a righty and lefty kind of a deal, but just this little like really just like mean as spit cat just like coming at you. It's just very good. So
I do want to skip to hated nemesis because this is all coming together for me in a good way, which is that Astrid Stormfang's tooth is Nif the Enduring because there's only one of them left. Because her nemesis, Betty the Golden Retriever, who really clings hard to the old ways, hence Betty, a classic, really leaning into that humanity there. Betty used a ball to knock out one of Astrid's teeth. So that can't be stood, and Betty needs to learn a lesson about just what one fang can accomplish.
Yes, this is very I'm simultaneous. I know that we are not Team Betty, but poor Betty. I know Betty didn't mean to do it. She's a golden retriever.
I do actually know a golden retriever named Betty who is the biggest sweetheart, but that's exactly the case for this book, right? Like, the fact that the Betty that I know in real life is the biggest sweetheart who loves people so much is exactly what these cats want to fight against. So, of course, if all of mankind were gone and the Betty that I know were around, she'd probably be very easily distracted. But when she focused, it would be, if there was a way to think about her people, she'd be doing it.
Yeah.
And we have people be like, you must either really hate cats or really hate dogs. And it's like, no, that
neither.
is a misconception. We are quite fond of both.
There's some good storytelling here, man. This is fertile ground. Before we get too much further, Keegan did drop Giles lore in the chat, so I need to hear more about this. Giles is my prince, so I need to know everything.
Giles is my cat. I found him in a dumpster. He's terrible. And I feel like I have to say that before I get going because his enemy is an outdoor cat named Loretta. She's this extremely fat little gray cat who's like the sweetest cat I've ever met in comparison to my evil cat. And he sees her through the we have glass front doors, and he sees her through the front door and just throws a fit. And she's just like sitting there in our front yard, like trying to avoid the rain. And I keep being like, I'm gonna go out there one of these days, and I'm just gonna take Loretta in because like you shouldn't have an outdoor cat. That's on you. If I take her.
I can't be blamed for kidnapping your cat. She was outside.
Yeah, and I mentioned it yesterday to my husband. I was like, hey, Joe, I just saw Loretta out in the rain. I think I'm going to go bring her in. He's like, yeah, go do it. And I was like, okay, this started as a joke. We've been joking about bringing Loretta in for like 3 years. Are we being serious about it? And he's like, if she lets you pick her up and bring her through the front door, it's our cat now.
Yes.
So keep up, keep out. We're going to have Loretta.
It's the cat distribution system at play.
I want to know how, when you do that, how Giles and Loretta are going
it's
to
be so bad.
Well, is it going to be so bad, and then like you someday have to rehome Loretta with people who will keep her inside, or so bad and they always fight, or so bad and they end up besties who are always intertwined with each other?
So here's the deal: I had Giles, and then about a year later, I got a dog. And my dog is the sweetest animal on the planet. It's like this 100-pound mastiff thing who she has no teeth. She has she's old as hell. She just wants to lay down. The worst she's ever done is lightly lick his face because she's like, we're gonna be best friends.
Oh no!
And it has been 7 years now, and he has not come around to her. She can't even walk. If he hears her walking up the stairs, he'll stand at the top of the stairs and hiss until somebody comes and picks him up and moves him away. So I don't think he's ever going to like Loretta, but that's just sort of his personality.
No, I love it. I think that this is we've got a situation where Loretta moves in and gives Giles the business. She's a street cat. She knows her ways. And the second that Giles is
she does not know her way. I can tell you this because I've picked her up and carried her multiple blocks to try to get her back to my house a few times.
Aww.
And it's always a few steps from my front door. She's like, okay, this is where the ride is.
And I'm out.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you. This is
no survival instincts on this cat.
This is very good. This has been our Giles Corner segment today. So thank you everyone for entertaining that.
I've had a few cats, but also this complete dichotomy of I've had one cat who was the absolute fiercest cat for blocks and would kick anything's ass. And this was a long time ago when I was growing up and didn't know that cats should be inside and actually wasn't responsible for this animal. Disclaimer. Mm-hmm. But this cat would kick the ass of anything within several blocks radius. And then I had another cat as an adult who was found in an empty lot and sad, teeny tiny little kitten, and ended up having a bunch of seizures from flea medication that turned out did the same thing to the cat that it did to the fleas. So PSA, always get it from your vet instead of over the counter. But that meant a lot of brain damage, which resulted in a cat with both no balance and just the sweetest nature. Like he would just walk his way into a wall and then purr about it. And that's my cat experiences by and large, are like the meanest, fiercest thing. And this one that, like, if another cat hit my sweetie cat, he probably just would have been like, oh, okay.
Oh,
We'll
so
come,
sweet.
we'll come home to my dog like covered in scratches, and it's like, oh, you tried to lick the cat again, didn't you?
He tried the love.
I've watched it happen. And he'll just like strike her across the face, and she's just like,
So sad.
Like, we get strong pet chat right now, and
Yes.
and also, like, if you came here for TTRPGs, like, that's cool. Also, you're watching a game about cats and dogs and raccoons.
We're
so
on topic for once.
chat,
It's fine.
Yeah, 100%. This is exactly how these streams go. Like, we are right on schedule. But I think that's like legitimately not a joke. I think like that's what's so marvelous about like tabletop role-playing games, especially with like these niche kind of like you're a cat that's like trying to prove itself to your warrior god. Like it does connect to like what an obscure, like delightful concept that people can immediately take and like use their real life experience of like, hey, I knew this cat that like lived down the street, or there was like I had this cat growing up, or what have you, and immediately like place themselves and begin to tell stories with like this concept. Like that's why these games are so cool, is because you can just kind of take like a Giles and make it into a character and like tell a story based on like this one particular aspect. And I think that's delightful and not something that you see with other forms of media, you know?
I think too, like, because it is an idea sort of outside of ourselves, that gives people an opportunity to, like I said, make the hardest metal cat they can think of, or the cutest cuddly thing, because all cats are valid, and you're not stuck to like, well, orcs are supposed to behave in this one fashion. It's like, nah, cats are cats. There's lots of cats. Like, do what you want. If you want to pull from the idea of a cartoon cat, or from that stray down the street, or like the biggest cuddle muffin that you ever met, or something at the zoo, like whatever, they're all cats. You can go whatever direction you want with your story.
Right. That's such a great point. And I love that, because I think a lot of times people think like the identity of the thing has to, like, if it's this, it always has to be this way, or like there's a morality that's assigned. It's like, no, it's just a cat.
It's just a cat. It's just a duck. Like, whatever.
We're just doing our thing.
Someday we're gonna make a game with humans, and it's gonna just really throw us for a loop there.
Yeah. No, you just lean in. Just a dude. Just a dude. Just a guy. It's just a gal.
Just a dude. There's lots of dudes, lots of dude types.
Yep. It's just that's it.
Is this not just High Magic Low Lives? I feel like you could invent a dude for High Magic Low Lives, and I'd be like, yeah, that fits.
That's a dude.
It's just a guy. Awesome. So what do we have? What do we have next? Is our cat fully realized?
So we've got one more thing, which I'm not gonna read a lot of these because there's a lot of them. But when you start having pledged yourself to a god, you start with a blessing from that god, and that usually will do something like give you a mechanical perk or whatnot. Sometimes it's a narrative perk. I kind of like I don't know. Sometimes I really like the mechanical perks because it's like, you know what you're doing with that. It's something you can write down on the character sheet and be like, yes, I'm going to add a 1d6 every time I roll. And other times we've got narrative ones that one of my favorites is the blessing of the gifted breath of mankind's babe, which is an edit. The very first teeny tiny zine edition was the stolen breath of mankind's babe, because of the whole myth of cats stealing baby's breath. And then before we released this, we had 2 kids, and Dan was like, I can't steal breath from babies. Actually, we're gonna this is a gift this time, it's okay. But on that one, because it is the gifted breath of mankind's babe, you may speak as men once spoke, and on exactly one occasion, you may issue a simple command to a dog and they must obey. It's like, that's not roll another d6, but you hold on to that one, and you're going to get an amazing opportunity for it. So that watch me go with that one, just because I just talked about it a bunch.
Listen, there's a lot of great options in that list. If that's the one that speaks to Astrid, I say go for it, but by no means does it have to be that one.
You know, I think with all the like storminess, and let's see, she's stormy and she's treacherous and spiteful and cunning and all that. So I think I'm gonna go with Blessing of Bubastis's fur, which I know I described her as having gray fur, but Bubastis's fur is, your fur is marked with weird and shifting darkness. Roll an additional d6 when striking from the darkness. So that's neat.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And you know, I like the idea of her like skulking around in a tree and shifting a little before she like lightning strikes with her one fang.
With her one enduring fang. So good. When you were going through the moves and like writing them, like you had a balance of mechanical to narrative moves. Did you start with the mechanical moves and decide that you needed some narrative moves, or like vice versa?
I think,
and always to have both.
I mean, I feel like when we are writing, I tend to like writing ones that have a more concrete mechanical benefit, and Dan will write ones that are much more narrative, story driven ones, and then we end up kind of pushing and pulling at each other's to make sure that the mechanical ones still have something fun to do with the story, and the narrative ones still have a significant concrete impact that you can have. So I don't think there's really a like, oh, we start with one or the other. We start with both and then pull them both kind of towards each other so that everything is satisfying to use. This is great.
And with that, I'm pretty sure we have crafted Astrid, which is delightful. So from here, Astrid would, well, I guess I should ask. We talked a little bit about it. Is Astrid on her first life?
At the moment, Astrid is on her first life because she's only got the one blessing. Apparently, you know, when Betty threw that ball, it knocked a tooth out, but it was otherwise insufficient, which is good because I feel like dying because a golden retriever threw a ball at you is not glorious, actually. No. So you don't want to go out like that.
No, I think this is very good. I love Astrid. I love everything about Astrid, and I wish her nothing but the best in life.
Lots of good death.
I think right now that would be a great place to take a break really quick. And just a reminder to people in the chat, we're taking questions. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about just general TTRPG stuff, get to know Kali a little bit better, and all of that. So if you have any questions about either Nine Lives or, Ttrpg.link, or whatever, throw them in the chat. We'll be checking them out, but also you should go drink some water because it's important for your human body. So
or coffee. We'll be back in like a few minutes.
Let's do it.
They caught you saying let's do it. That's perfect.
Let's do it.
We're back.
Keegan, tell them where we went.
I went to go get water.
Oh, come on. That was like the greatest setup, and you were like, no.
I don't know what you're trying to set up. I'm so sorry.
It's fine. It's fine.
I went to go get water, and I have ADHD, and I left my pitcher in the freezer. Oh,
thank you, Collie.
Fuck.
Thank you. Oh, man. Yeah, Keegan is canceled. Keegan is no longer part of the show. It's me and Collie, baby. This is our show now. I love it. Okay, they can come back. You can come back.
Okay, thanks. That was good setup. I'm just an idiot. Thanks.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. But we're back. We are gonna just spend some more time with the delightful Collie here, ask some questions, and hang out for a bit before we get back to our brilliant Sunday afternoons. My first question, Collie, is around kind of the game design for this game. I want to know what lessons you learned from designing this game particularly. Like, what was there an aha moment in the midst of this that you've taken forward when designing other games, like lessons learned, that kind of a thing?
I think the biggest lesson that we had from Nine Lives to Valhalla in particular was not to assume that if Dan can do something, other people can too. Because when I was talking before about the pacing of it and how it's just this like non-stop full energy thing to run for hours, Dan will do that. And so in my head it was very like, oh yeah, so that's a thing anybody can do. Could I do that? Like I have not tried, and I don't think that I would want to run like maximum energy performance for multiple hours in that way. And so there's a sort of like, okay, so let's assume that players are not Dan. I think like, well, and it's funny because this one already existed, our playtests of it had been Dan running it off of, this thing that came out of our little printer. I think it was like before we even got a long arm stapler. So it was like funky stapled even. And that was a sort of like, oh yeah, so we know how this runs because years ago, Dan ran it several times, and that missed an important step of, okay, but if you're not Dan,
right,
how does it run? And I think we did build in a nice kind of escape valve there with there's a system where you can kill Death, who is the GM. So if one person is really flagging, like somebody else might be able to step in there and pick up the energy themselves. But like I think it is good that we wrote an escape valve. It would also have been good to see how it felt for other people to run before just being like, so you're going to be on a nonstop adrenaline rush for like 4 hours. Go, go, go.
Right. And what I'm hearing is you had to kind of de-danify the system. And I love that. I think that's delightful. And I'm going to use that all the time now.
Yeah, the DM in this game is Dan.
Well, he's good at it. He has like energy, and he feeds off of other people's energy so well that, or like not feeds, but like he bounces off of that so that he can actually run like a full 9 lives worth of 9 Lives to Valhalla. I think that's Dan is a big old extrovert. And not everybody is a big old extrovert, actually.
Yeah. And I think like in the concept of game design too, that's such an important thing to keep in mind, is like the intention of like the designer or the way the designer would play the game is not necessarily like the practical application of the game, right? Whether it's like Dan or anyone else, and kind of being mindful of how is a regular person who sees this at their local game shop going to be able to like experience this game. Like there absolutely can be people that are like that go 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 energy, but if this is like the first game that they're ever picking up, how are they going to be able to interact with the game, right?
Building it so that it can accommodate multiple styles of play, multiple styles of running a game, and sort of like if in some of our longer term projects, like we've been that this is I feel like Keegan is the one who's doing the most work to keep it a secret that we've been polishing second edition of High Lives for like a long time now. But with that, it's very like we're making a much more conscious effort to accommodate, say, okay, if you're a GM who wants to take a loose idea and run with it and just have the rest of the game be like some loose ideas that you can explore, like, great, we will write for that. If you want to be guided a little more closely than that and know exactly like, okay, this is what is coming to me and I can run with this thing that you have provided because you have told me what to do with it. Like, we can also provide that level of detail. Not quite going to go into a 2-inch thick tome of world building and like 400 pages of mechanics or anything, but I like building in more of that flexibility for a person's style of how they want to play and engage to for the book to kind of accommodate that.
Awesome. One of the other questions, you briefly touched on something I was eager to ask you when you were talking about how you got into games of like the classic like femme presenting person, like, this is how you play the game and I'm gonna explain it really slow and like really arduously, and anytime you go to do something I'm gonna re-explain the words. Like, I, being a femme presenting person in the game space, in the designer space, what advice would you have for another femme person like jumping into game design? Like, what's kind of something you would say to them?
Put your name first and big. That has actually been a thing that Dan has had to work really hard on, because as I mentioned, when I got started making games, I was doing sort of behind the scenes work on things that then would have Dan's name on them. And it years later, my name, even after my name was like on the covers, also Dan gets a lot of credit for our stuff. And Dan would always be the one getting tagged, and Dan would get the accolades, and it'd be kind of like, okay, I'm here too. And the number of times that Dan has had to like send a quiet DM to be like, hey, so you only credited me, but I'm not, like, Gemroom Games is not just a fun name for Dan Phipps to use by himself. Like, there is a partnership there. And I recognize this doesn't necessarily apply to somebody who is working by themselves, but like, especially for me, being a femme presenting person with a very cis dude, like, it has been a big problem for us trying to make sure that credit doesn't just kind of default to the cis white dude in the pairing. So in that way, I feel like if you are in a situation where you are working with people who might fit a more sort of default TTRPG face, make sure it's your face, make sure it's your name, like, take credit for your work and avoid the, sometimes it feels like we're crawling back from a misstep we didn't know we were making. When I was at first, I was like, oh, well, I'm just engaging in a little hobby work, like, I'll let Dan take all the credit. No, like, no, always take credit for your work and make sure that other people give you credit for your work too.
It's sort of interesting just from, and like, not to be like Dan doesn't do any work, but like I think a lot of the things that make gym room games like so like notable and like things you just pick up when you see them on the shelf is they have like a very strong visual identity. And I think very frequently what we've seen is a lot of that is actually on your end too. So it's really interesting hearing that, like, oh, you know, Dan gets all the credits. Like, Callie's the reason it's getting picked up off the shelf.
Well, I mean, you know, there's that whole that thing that I disagree with strongly, that like art doesn't matter in tabletop RPGs. It's just there for marketing. And it's like, well, no, like art and layout and all those visual components do so much to communicate what a game is about, mm-hmm. to establish tone for you, and they can. We were just talking about Merkborg the other day, how people want to be like, oh, I'll just use the bare bones like plain text version because whatever, the art doesn't matter. And it's like the art does so much to tell you what the game is about, to give you all those vibes and help get you into that world. Like art absolutely matters for these things. But you have a lot of people who want to be like, oh, well, the only true part of game design is the mechanics. And I think that sort of person tends a lot more to be like, well, Dan's the crunchier one. So, which is funny also, because I was just saying earlier how I like.
Yes, I was just going to point out that like you're the more like, I want the moves that provide like a mechanical boost or something, like they are resolved mechanically. Like the narrative moves are fun and like good, but you lean more towards those ones that like have the mechanical payoff.
But like as our duo, I think the more we work together, we've been working together for a long time now, and it's still developing as a partnership where we are each kind of developing our own strengths, but then learning from each other. And like I've been doing more actual writing in the last year than I've done before, which is really great and exciting for me to be developing those skills. And Dan's done way more experimenting with visuals behind the scenes, and it's super cool that we can build off of each other in those ways. But usually when it comes to working on games, I will more comfortably go to the like, well, let me work on like world building and the fun narrative parts, and Dan will have a really good time being like, I'm gonna sit down with some dice and like figure out like the numbers of this and probabilities. And I'm like, please do not talk to me about probabilities. Like, I don't.
That's not interesting to me.
Especially like he's a morning person and I am not, and he will talk to me about it before I've even had tea. And it's just like, I'm going to hate this idea because I am sleepy. And please come back to me when you are asleep and I am awake now, because that's when it'll make sense. And since that doesn't work, like, for a lot of stuff like that, it just has to be like, okay, write it down,
put it on a sticky note,
revisit it when my brain is working, and then we can work on it that way. But like, because I feel like I've started rambling on this one, but
no, that's wonderful.
But we have strengths that we are each a little more interested in and a little more comfortable in, and mine have historically been on the side of those parts of game design that that a lot of people like to dismiss as like not true game design.
I find that interesting. My brain's like excited about what you just said and is trying to form 7 sentences at the same time. There is like the idea of game design only being XYZ, being more dismissive, and I hate even saying this, of like the softer stuff, because I don't even think that that's the right way to describe it, though that is the way that I feel like we hear a lot, like softer skills or the art or the fluffy, the marketing skills, right? The lady stuff, right? It's interesting to hear like that discussed in like in this context, you know what I mean, and seeing it still be like a thing. Would you say that that's something that is shifting as like indie games dives more into like a diverse, I would say my exposure to indie games and the area is a lot more diverse than like your big A titles. There's a lot more gender diversity, persons of colors in certain pockets. Would you say that that's an improving thing from your standpoint, or how do you feel about it?
It's definitely a thing that I hope is improving. I think it depends a lot on your personal scene. Like if you're hanging out at your local game store that happens to be in a very white town and only playing a big title, then yeah, your scene probably does not have a lot of diversity, and that's not necessarily being pushed to everyone. A thing that I really like about the sort of indie TTRPG scene online is that there is so much more diversity there, and I think the fact that there is so low overhead, like right now, yeah, we're making physical books and it's awesome and really gratifying to do, but you don't have to do that. You can have a Google Doc and some public domain art and put it up on itch, and or even if you're in a country that itch doesn't work with somehow, like there are ways you can put it up online in any number of ways and get your work out there. And that's an incredible thing that's happening right now to encourage diversity, I think, is that that sort of barrier to entry to get involved is getting lower and lower. And certainly for me personally, Duckburg has been very exciting, because maybe it's because my name is first on the Kickstarter this time, but like that whole problem that I talked about of my credit sort of slipping to the side hasn't been happening as much, which is really exciting to read about us. And it's like design duo, Gem Room Games, as
Right.
if we're, both valid creators working together and helping to make each other make better stuff. Like instead of sort of the setup of like Einstein's wife who edited his papers and did his laundry,
Right.
and nobody knows her name.
Right. The magician and their assistant, right?
Uh-huh.
Like that kind of trope that ekes in where it's like very dismissive, right?
So like for me personally, it feels like that is getting better in really refreshing ways, and as a larger scene, I think the lower the barriers to entry that we can have, the greater a diversity within the scene we can embrace, and that's an exciting thing to see developing. And it is sort of a shame that social media is a big garbage pit right now, which is making certain elements of that harder. And I hope that we find wonderful new non-garbage pit ways to share what people are doing.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned we talked a little bit about the art and like how that really sets tone and everything. What is something when you're designing games you want to ensure is in every game that you're making, right? Like whether like the principle of it, right? Not necessarily like it has a sick cover or like anything, but like what
it's got a what are RPGs section.
You got to make sure you got one in every single one. You got to relearn every time. Just change the words a little bit so they don't know it's the same. But no, like what's something that you really want to have embedded in your games each time you put out a new title?
I think I got two answers: the sort of big scope and the like smaller scope serious. The smaller scope serious is actually, I do think that a not a what are RPGs, but a what is this particular thing that you are looking at that provides context for how to engage with something is actually a really useful thing to have, and connects to, I think a lot about how to make sure that every single game can be plausibly somebody's first game and give them a good experience with that. And having some kind of snippet that says like, yeah, here's the tone and here's the context for this and what you can do with it is, I think, a really valuable part of a game. and also can tell you a lot about like what the creator thinks and their intent, which is a fun time to kind of be like, hey, so here's a little Gemroom Games thinky thought there. But on a bigger scale, the other day Dan and I were talking about the fact that we make games that are very like, this is fun, and it's like, it's kitties and hoverboarders and yay, and secretly are all like very sad, deep sad games with
you're dying a
serious
lot
messages, but like, but you know, it's let's talk about why fascism is bad and why diversity is good and why you need to fight for your community and fight for love and take down the shit that is bringing us all down, but presented in a way that can be fun to engage with. And that's sort of a thing that I think when we're getting recognized for writing funny games, it's like, yes, also it's like anti-fascist also, FYI, like
right.
But having that, I think that it's a lot more fun to work on something, I think, that has more meaning somewhere in it, that we're not just writing jokes, we're also trying to say something that we want to say about the world. One of my favorite definitions of art, I can only ever remember snippets of, but it's like culturally significant meaning skillfully encoded in a sensuous medium. I may have just gotten the whole thing, but that idea of it's jokes and it's fun times, right. but that's the encoding. It's the culturally relevant or culturally significant meaning that we hopefully skillfully encode into a more sensuous medium, sensuous in this case being, you know, not just like, ooh, this velvet feels nice, but right. This is engaging you this on a lot of different levels.
Right.
So that is something that we aspire to doing with all of our games.
I think that's fantastic. I think, again, like the part of TTRPGs that gets me really excited is the storytelling. And even like in the design and the mechanics of the games, like people are telling stories, whether they realize it or not, right? You're making a statement. Art makes statements, and this is art. And so it's really cool to hear how intentional you guys are being about that, like with your like, you're not coming out and like beating everybody with like the like fascism is bad stick, but you are,
which it is, but
which you absolutely are, and like that's a great weapon that you can have for your kitty cat in Nine Lives of Valhalla. But it's, you know, it's, I think that there's a desire to like say something and have and cause like meaningful conversation, even if like that's happening between two kitty cats or you know, between two ducks, but giving people the vehicle to explore those ideas and like really put them to practice in their lives, right, is like really one of the like very powerful things that TTRPGs can do that like other mediums are also trying to do, like, but like it's different when you're putting yourself into it, you know, in like a real meaningful way.
On pulling out that personal engagement from a person and giving them the opportunity to really get in it and play with those thoughts and see how that feels is a pretty cool thing to do.
Yeah. Even as you were talking, I feel like the graphic novels, right? The Holocaust survivors. I read that when I was like in middle school or something. And I had originally picked it up because I was like, oh, there's these like this art. The art is catchy and like it is nice and it is like interesting, you know. And I remember getting about halfway through and then like having like the horrific realization, like this isn't mice. You know what I mean?
Oh wait.
Yeah, like, oh wait, no, this is real. This isn't mice. This is something that's like much bigger. And like truly that was like, this sounds I think a little bit silly, but like to a kid brain that was more impactful than like sitting in any sort of like lesson about, listening to like history, right? Because like I had engaged with it in a completely different way through the vehicle of storytelling to like have that mean something.
Things like fascism, like the Holocaust, stuff like
Yeah.
this is big and hard, and
Yes.
and when you're talking about like human conditions and death counts and stuff like that, that can be so hard for a person to wrap their mind around, that it's not just tempting and not just easy, but like there's a tendency, I think, to sort of push away from that and not engage, because it both hurts to engage and is hard to engage. And encoding that in a different way, like Mouse, that brings you the art and lets you get into that on a different level,
right?
That's an opportunity to engage with these things, with these big concepts that might otherwise feel too big, too hard to get into, in a more approachable way.
Right. I think that's fantastic. Continuing like on some of like the game design stuff, what would you say is the most challenging aspect of game design? The thing that like has got you up at night, like kind of pulling your hair out, like, oh, if I could, this one thing about it.
I mean, I'm always up at night with my brain racing anyhow, so that's all of it. But
it's project management, Sarah.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Oh God, right now it's project management stuff. But I think the other thing, the thing that is hard for me, is that when my brain does start racing on something, getting it to actually stop so that I can write the idea down and then go handle everything else that I need to handle, whether that be project management or like running errands or whatnot. Like getting my brain to stop enough after I've had the idea so that I can sit with the idea and let it develop is a real neuro challenge for me.
Dan's in the chat and just said it's the endless promo, and it's also that.
endless promo. Well, I want to be like, well, our promo is going to stop in like 48 hours. No, it's not.
It's never going to stop.
Part of doing this is never shut up. Like whether we're trying to crowdfund something or doing pre-orders or working on a new thing, it's always keep talking about it. And also for good reason too, because whether it's that we want to get people thinking about hoverboards or like the inequalities of the economy, like if you make a thing and then go, great, I made it, I'm going to close this file on my laptop and the end, like that's, then nobody sees it. And I came out of both visual and performing arts in my background, and more recently visual, and it's hard for me to make something and then let it just sit there unseen. Like I as a person don't always necessarily want to be perceived, but I want the things that I make to be perceived, and the only way for that to happen is to never shut up about it, and probably a lot more to be perceived as a person, so that I can talk about it and make sure that people are perceiving the stuff that we're making. So that's that. You know what? Yeah, that was a thanks, Dan. That's the hardest thing, is finding that my tendency always is to go kind of like, okay, but I just want to make the thing,
right?
And it's got to be two parts. It's you make the thing and then you never shut up about it. You keep talking, because also the more you talk about it to other people, the more opportunities you have for them to go, oh, and what if, and I've got an idea and I did this with my game, and that makes your next game better because you've been exposed to all these cool new ideas.
I love that. The cross collaboration that comes from just acknowledging that your game exists out loud to other people, right? Like how that improves the work. That's fantastic. I have a couple other questions. We talked a lot about game design. I'd like to shift a little bit more to like characters and like that side of things. Because it's great to design games, but we also play games. Is there a character trope or like concept that you find yourself when you get the chance to play games in the middle of your busy schedule, that you kind of go to, like a comfort character trope that you're like, this is kind of my jam?
Like, I'm usually playing either the like very stoic assassin sort that nobody actually knows that well, or the super hype, naive, and excited kid. Like, completely one energy level or the other.
Mm-hmm. I'm such a fan of like the hype, excited kid energy. Like anytime someone rolls up to the table with that, I'm like, we are best friends. This is my favorite thing. Yes, yes, yes. I don't care whatever my character is. I don't care. We're besties now because I love it.
That one is so good because when I'm say some stoic assassin, there's not a lot of opportunity when you have a character who is intentionally closed off from others. Well, you're gonna be closed off from others. When you're like the 12-year-old trying to get in on the gang, right? All right, you got mentor opportunities. You can annoy somebody. You can be under somebody's wing. Like, there's a lot more opportunity there to engage with the other players and their characters and form those relationships and really enrich the world that you're playing in together through that.
Yeah. One of the things that I say when I'm like playing at tables, it's like, your secrets aren't interesting if nobody knows them. Like, your secrets, like tell all your secrets. Don't have secrets. Like, just throw it all out there, because you can still be like interesting and engaging, but now people can actually engage with like what is interesting.
And if you want it to be a secret, let it be a secret from the characters, but let the other players know, because now you can all work together to make way more interesting situations and bring this tension to them not knowing something.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pro tell all your secrets. I think it's fantastic. And then this is the question I had asked you. I'm starting to prep our guests with it because it feels a little mean to just sneak up on them with it. But what are 3 characters from like any form of media that you have encountered that you kind of carry with you? Because I think, again, we're all kind of an amalgamation of our experiences and like we carry stories with us, particularly like people stories. What are 3 that you really are like, these are the ones that like I either think about or I just carry with me that become a part of you?
So the first one that I was thinking about is a little bit of a 2-parter, so you're kind of accidentally getting 4 characters here.
Oh, hell yeah, we love an exclusive.
But so I think it's funny that I'm here talking about a couple games that are like, oh, this is like our like death metal doom rock game, because I read the Anne of Green Gables series, like revisit that one a lot in my life, and my favorite one of the series is Anne's House of Dreams. There's a character in that one named Leslie Moore who is described as this like incredibly beautiful, incredibly smart and charismatic and deeply closed off person. And it's because she's suffered so much trauma in her life that when she sees Anne, who at this point is no longer of Green Gables, but like, okay, when she sees Anne, who has come in with this bubbly, happy, optimistic life, she is just like, nope, I can't actually deal with this. And they're neighbors in a place where there's nobody else. Like, they are almost their only walking distance neighbors. So they gotta hang out because that's what their society wants them to do. But there's always this big wall between them. And then, spoilers for a book that's been out for like a century now, but Anne has a baby, and that baby dies like within hours of being born. And that's real hard for her, very understandably. And sometime later, when she has physically recovered and is recovering from the emotions that went along with that, Leslie approaches her and apologizes, but also is able to talk about how, well, see, it's not that this is good, but now that Anne has also had trauma, that's kind of brought down this wall between them that before, Anne's like perfect happiness was such a toxic thing for her to be around when she had so much trauma. And now Anne's got trauma too. There's no more perfect happiness, so there's nothing standing between them in that way. And now they can just actually be good friends. And it's less precisely the character of Leslie Moore and more that intersection of how their traumas meet and change their relationship that always sticks with me. And it's one of the saddest things in the whole series, and that's the part that I always want to reread first.
I think that's beautiful though, right? Like it's the encapsulation of like the human experience of saying like, hey, I see you. Like I know that feeling. Like maybe not that exact feeling. The way I describe it is like life is kind of like a movie theater, right? When we're all have our own seats. I'm not sitting in the same seat you are in, but I've sat in that row before, right? Like I've seen the stage from that same kind of angle. And like when you have a story telling it like kind of giving you that and giving you an angle that like hits, like there are very few things that are better. You're like, yes, I know that one. Like, yes, I feel that.
Unlike that really significant thing about breaking down the things that are holding people apart.
Right.
Another one that I was thinking about was Squirrel Girl, and not Squirrel Girl in general, but very specifically Squirrel Girl, written by Ryan North and drawn by Erica Henderson, because I just love that character. I love how she's in this world where, as a superhero, and a superhero with a lot of strength, like physical strength, the thing that she is expected to do is go kick ass. And 9 times out of 10, what she really wants to do is talk to the villain and figure out what their actual problem is and help them solve that. And she walks away from it with a new friend. It's like, this is not how your trope is supposed to go, but it does. And that's always really fun for me to read those ones. And it's funny and it's refreshing to see a different take in that setting.
Yeah. It less of the like, we'll just punch the problem until it goes away, and more of like, no, there's a real problem here and we can have it. It's the longer way around, the one that's like more difficult, but is also more interesting.
Actual problem, and we can actually solve the problem instead of just punting it out to a different place.
Right. Yeah, love it. Who rounds out our list?
Last one, I'm just gonna go with Lydia Dietz, because I have felt like she was a fashion icon since I first saw Beetlejuice, and I'm wearing a black sweater. I don't think I come across as a like black lace gothy sort, but she at some level is how I always want to look.
I love that. That's very good. I love that a lot. We have a comment in the chat. Kali herself is strange and unusual. So this is very good. That's all the questions I really had. Keegan, anything from you? Or Kali, was there anything that you were like just really dying to like talk about with the two of us to like engage with?
I mean, I feel like I gotta, for the 18 millionth time, say go check out the Duckboard Kickstarter. We're in our last like 40 hours or something right now, and it's going
40
great.
40 hours to go, yeah.
Wait, we're like exactly right
I'm
now?
on the Kickstarter page right now, and it is 40
That
hours to
was-
go.
That was
That's
entirely
amazing.
The
yes.
dome, that was
Good job,
incredible.
me. That is apparently how deep I am in that brain, is that I just had a sense. I was like, yes, it's this many more hours of
Let me just
thinking
connect directly
precisely
to the
about this
database.
one. We actually, I think this is kind of funny. I set it up as a like, oh, easy breezy. We're just going to do a 2-week Kickstarter. We're not going to drag this on all month because that's hard. So let's just do 2 weeks. Kickstarter even made it real easy for me to just check the button and be like, 2 weeks. I want 2 weeks. And what I didn't realize when I said 2 weeks was that meant that it was going to end at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday.
Unceremoniously, 7 a.m. on a Tuesday.
So it's like, all right, I guess I'll set an alarm to like update.
Oh, no.
some
Collie,
links there.
you said you weren't a morning person either.
I'm
That's
really
awful. Oh
No.
no.
It's going to be
No,
even
it's
worse
really-
because we have to drink Malort when it funds, right?
Oh my
If-
god.
If it funds to 666%, Dan has promised to drink some Malort, because Malort has an umlaut and so does Duckborg, deservedly or not. But also, does Malort deserve its umlaut?
We
it
have
doesn't
some
matter.
scholars in TikTok that will debate this for us.
Very much so. The point is, if we fund to that much, then Dan will drink some Malort.
Presumably not at
presumably in a
7
way
a.m.
people
on
can-
Tuesday.
I hope not, because he would have to go to work after that.
Oh
But-
no, that's a bad day.
Dan, don't get yourself fired for this.
But presumably also in a way that people could see. This isn't going to be Dan like hiding in our basement taking a sip.
Right.
Although it
So
would be
we'll-
really funny.
That would be very
Just
funny.
update,
Just-
Dan drank it.
Just Dan on TikTok,
Yeah.
like very quietly in the dark, sipping Malort. No,
Very
I
good.
don't know if we're going to make it to 666. I think right now we are at, I'm waiting for a tab to 564. So if we can get, 102 more % funded in the next 40 hours, then we will have to figure out how to get some Malort for Dan to drink.
Very good.
And if not, maybe we can find something with a shorter name or maybe an accent instead of an umlaut. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, go check it out. Yeah.
Yeah. And with the Kickstarter, where's the best? I know, like, social
The-
media, it's craziness right now.
The link is under our head, actually.
The link to the Kickstarter is directly beneath us. It's very cool and very good. But Collie, where's the best place for people to like find you, interact with you on the airwaves?
So Gemroom Games is in a lot of places, always under the handle of Gemroom Games. I mostly right now am on Blue Sky and Discord. I'm at the Gemroom Games Discord most of all because of limited Discord bandwidth. And I'm on Blue Sky pretty much every day because it's kind of a fun place right now. So that's me at, what the heck do I call myself on that one? I think just Hello, It's Collie.
I think it's something like that. That
yeah.
sounds right.
Yeah. You can find me there at Hello, It's Collie on Blue Sky.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. This was delightful. I encourage everyone to go make Dan drink Malort so we don't de-danify the Malort experience. And then also get 9 Lives to Valhalla and be cute little kitty cats that are destined for greatness and death, because that's metal as fuck.
Great. I think with that, I think we're all done. I think we waved.
Yeah.
I think we tell everyone bye.
Okay, we say them bye.
Bye.
Enjoy your